Hello everyone, back out in the shop here and been working on a whole lot of things. So I put the motor back in and redid the engine mount on the driver's side here. So you can see I shortened up the mount that I showed you in the last video, re-welded that on, and then made a new frame stubby piece here that comes out, and that gives plenty of room for the steering shaft to go and meet up with the steering column. If need be, I can always section into this and weld a piece of tubing in if this needs to angle down a bit further, but I think we're going to be golden. Here you can see the Langdon headers installed. They went on really nice. I just had to clearance a few of the mounting tabs on it so that it interacts with the Clifford intake manifold properly. There's a lot of information out there that the Langdon headers don't work with the Clifford manifold, and this is not a water-cooled manifold, which they are now, or water-heated, sorry, not cooled, water-heated manifold, which they are now. This is the old style, and there's plenty of clearance here. There is the exhaust downpipe or B-pipe that I've made. It just goes down, connects down there with some V-bands. These are the clutch lines that you saw me working on yesterday. And so the feed line is just gonna go and mount up next to this with another bulkhead union right there once I get one. And then I got this brake line just temporarily mounted. Got a banjo, 90-degree banjo on that side. So once I get this back on the ground here, that's what I'm going to be working on next. So everything is ready for this guy to drop on the ground. But I wanted to show you the underside of the car real quick. I got the drive shaft made, as I said before, and I got it up and installed now. And I've checked all the clearances, and so I have plenty of clearance to be able to make a piece that will connect the boxed section of the body to go up and over and to connect this back together. There's plenty of room when the suspension is aired all the way out or all the way up. And I have the exhaust on, as you can see, and so the exhaust is just comes back to the axle for now, and then I got to do the rear section still. But you can see the passenger side here crosses over and meets up over to the downpipe or the B pipe there, and so that turned out really nice. And they just mount with a nice little tabber right here onto the frame. It's all shaved so that it clears, because this actually lays right on the ground, and it's nice and sturdy. But throughout the length from here to where it connects and then up into the headers, that should be enough wiggle room, especially with the V-bands there and just being 2-inch mild steel. So you shouldn't have any issues. So I'll have to go from the exhaust tip here out the back. But I'm ready to put this thing on the ground. So I got the rear end all back up in here and made a little tiny adjustment to the pinion angle so that at ride height it is dialed in perfectly. And then got all of the plumbing that I've done double checked to make sure everything's clearing and everything is looking really good up in here. So the next step is going to be dropping this thing on the ground and do that so that I can do the front brake soft lines. So I'll do, like I said before, lock to lock, all the way aired out and all the way aired up, so that I can figure out the best routing so that the line isn't going to get tangled in the tire or the suspension or rub on anything. And so that's the next step. That way, once I get the soft lines made, I can do the hard lines up to the firewall, and then all of the plumbing on the outside of the car will be complete. And the other thing I can do when it's on the ground here is double check that I have enough clearance between the rear bumper and the ground when it's aired out to get my exhaust tips through here. So I got my rear bumper and I gave it a nice cleanup with some 400 or actually 400 stainless steel wool, and got that mounted up with the splash pan. And so that will aid in figuring out if I need to make some little recesses for the exhaust tips or not. From the cars I've seen online, it looks like they're with a 2-inch exhaust tip, it's basically just enough room to get out from under there. Plus the bumper is at the lowest setting right now. There is some wiggle room. It can go up probably about a 1/2 inch because the splash pan is slotted. So the splash pan can go down and then the whole assembly can go up a little bit. And so that's one of the things I want to check out here. I got the air system with some temporary T's. So this is for the front, this is for the rear, and there's just Schrader valves. That way I'll be able to fill the system once it's back on the ground here. I got the artillery wheels back on, got the white walls cleaned up. Anytime I take them out of the little storage area in here, I hit them with some warm water because I want to keep those things nice and clean. And once there's a stain on it, it's hard to get it off if you let it sit on there forever. So if you're wondering, these are 15x6, 4 3/4 back spacing, I believe, maybe 4.5 inch back spacing. They're just wheel Vintiques, that brand. And it's a 195/65 diamond back tire on there. So the tire's just under 25 inches tall. So when this thing is aired all the way out, it's pretty close right here. But there is room. You can't run too much of a taller tire and lay frame on these cars unless, well, lay rocker. If you don't deal with your frame like you saw me do in a previous episode, you're not going to lay on your rocker, and then you can run a much bigger tire. But if you're going to lay rocker on these things, you're pretty much limited to a 25-inch tall tire, maybe 25.5. As you can see how the rear fender mounts here, this line comes out, and so you really don't have much of anything at all that you can cut into here to raise the fender line up to provide clearance. If you went with like a bias ply or a really skinny tire, you could probably, right along this edge, tub the inner fender so that the wheel can recess up just that little extra bit. And then you can maybe run one of those old school like Firestone bias plies that have the really nice fat wide walls on them. But for doing the radials, you're pretty much limited to that. So I'm gonna get this thing on the ground here, and then we'll start messing with all the stuff I was talking about. So I have been working on the front brakes, and I got them finished. Turned out to be really simple. Finished with a lowercase f. I'll show you why. So like I said before, I needed to make sure that within the full range of motion up and down and left and right with the steering wheels, that the brake lines were not going to get caught up in anything. And so what I came up with is this. So it's a 90-degree banjo coming out of the caliper, and it comes up. And these are temporary, so that's the lowercase f. I'm actually going to buy some weld-on fittings that are designed to hold brake lines that you can run a zip tie through. They're these little machined stainless steel things. And so I will TIG weld one here and one here, basically right next to each other, so that I can zip tie the soft line to the control arm, just because these band clamps here are a little bit ugly. I shrink wrapped a section of it, any part of it that I felt like could rub on the chassis or anything else. I just put some nice heat shrink on so it won't scratch anything. Eventually the frame will be powder coated, and you know, it might rub a little bit throughout the range of motion. But this was pretty much the only solution that I found that I was happy with and worked. When the suspension is at full lock, this just bunches up a little more, but it still has plenty of radius and doesn't get into the tire or anything else. And then when the wheel is fully in the other direction, whether the suspension is up or down, it's got plenty of wiggle room there too. And then it just snakes in behind here, behind the QA1 shock, and comes down to the soft line to hard line tab here. So I just bought this universal brake line tab and welded it to the chassis. And so this is the end of the soft line, and then we have the hard line here, and it just goes on with your standard connection. So I'll buy a new one of those just so that it's not this grubby old one. But then I have a stainless line. It'll be a little hard to see. It goes along the frame rail here and then goes up to the kick panel of the firewall. I was originally going to have this come up over here and be on the inside of the frame rail, but then thinking about it, you know, this car is going to have metal inner fenders that connect up into the outer fender, and I'll obviously have to trim out for the Mustang 2 suspension and the shock mounts, but I want everything to be nice and tidy, and that way none of the rocks and everything and dust get kicked up off of the tires into the engine bay. And so I decided, why don't we just keep this brake line on the outside of the frame rail? So that comes in right to this bulkhead union, 45 degrees, so it points it straight up. So that will be able to come up here and migrate its way over there. The brake pedal is obviously going to be hanging here. It has a 90-degree bracket, so it'll be a booster and a master cylinder right here, and then off of that will be the proportioning valve. So everything from the rear brakes, which are right here, the front left brake, the front right brake, all of those will migrate up to here to the proportioning valve. And then there's also going to be one more union on this side, which will be a -4 bulkhead for the clutch pedal. And I went and found my emergency brake handle. I was going to see if I could adapt the stock linkages to what I have going on down there, which is just the factory S10 cable e-brake lines, and the holes that the linkages used to travel through the firewall have been shaved by the previous owner. And so I really like the look of a real clean, nice shaved firewall. What I'm going to do is just convert this, which this is where the rod used to go. So I'll just convert that to a modern cable. And so I got to figure out what parts I can put together to make the e-brake happen. Since this is a manual transmission, yeah, I just want to have a working e-brake, even though I can air this thing all the way out and just lay right on the frame. I just want to do things as good as I can, and that includes having a functioning e-brake. So that's it for me out here today. I'm going to leave off here because it'll be a good point for me to get back out here tomorrow. And I have the gas pedal and the brake pedal and that whole assembly, and I want to get started on the brackets for that. So I'll mount the gas pedal first because that's obviously going to be here on the right, and so everything will be dictated from that because of the transmission tunnel, which is a little wide here. So I'll make a mount on the firewall, whether it's here, or maybe between here, whatever, to hold the throttle pedal. And then once I get that set in there, then I can kind of figure out the spacing for the brake pedal and how that interacts with the steering column, whether the brake pedal is going to be on the left side of the steering column or the right. And then after that, get those guys mounted and I can do all the plumbing there. And then I still have to order a hanging clutch pedal, but I honestly wanted to get the gas pedal and the brake pedal hung so that I can figure out what clutch pedal I need, because there's a lot of different types and lengths and everything else, and I'd rather just order the right one than spend 150 bucks ordering a clutch pedal and then having to modify the pedal to put it in the right place and everything. So I figure if I get the gas pedal and the brake pedal hung, then I can easily figure out what is gonna suffice for the clutch pedal. And so that's going to be up next, and then once that's mounted, then yeah, I'll be able to run all the rest of the stainless steel hard line, and then basically all of the plumbing will be done in the car except for the hard line for the engine. So the fuel line comes up to right here. There'll be a a barb fitting, and then there'll be a soft line from there to over here. This is the fuel pump. I'm running an electric fuel pump now, so I'm gonna run a block off plate there. And this is the factory fuel hard line right here that feeds the carbs. So I'm gonna redo this line in stainless steel, as well as redo the vacuum feed for the carburetor in some stainless steel brake line as well. Bend those up all nice, like, get them routed. And then I'm also going to I'm going to try to find some glass fuel filter, like the bowl type ones, to hang off of here. And then I'll run the fuel hard lines in and tee them, and then there'll be a regulator with a pressure gauge sitting right here. I don't know if I'll do that on this side of the engine or out front here. I'll kind of do it based on some aesthetics as well as functionality. And after that, basically all of the plumbing is going to be complete except for, obviously the radiator when that goes in, but this is all stock, so I can just use stock radiator hoses. And so yeah, everything is coming along super fast here. Once I get the gas pedal and brake pedal mounted, I'm going to start working on the steering column. I'm going to modify the steering column because it used to connect right to a steering box. Now I'm going to have it output a 3/4 inch shaft to hook up with the rack. And so I'll want to get the steering column modified so that I can bolt it into the dash. I'll have to mount the dash up, get it bolted to the dash, and figure out where the flange bearing is going to go on the firewall there. Get that all done, and then I can build the shaft from the column down here to the steering rack. And at that point, we're really going to be into the real minutia of everything, putting stuff back together. I need to get the doors hung, obviously. This glass here, the previous owner had started taking out, and then I don't know if he gave up on it or just got halfway done or whatever. So I need to get this connected back to the track and get that all sorted. And then this has been partially taken off. So it's all a little stuff like that. And there'll be a few bigger things. I need to modify the bench seat to clear the drive shaft tunnel and a bunch of, stuff like that. I'm not going to worry about a rear seat now because I'm not going to be doing the interior for this year. It'll basically just be a bench seat, bare metal everywhere. I'll be dealing with the interior either next winter or the winter after. But yeah, I'll be getting to the point here. I'm hoping in like 2 weeks to be wiring this thing, have the battery, run all that stuff, alternator, wire in the chassis harness for like headlights, taillights, all that stuff, wire in for the air compressors and air management system, and do the 12 volt conversion. I don't know if this car had been converted to 12 volt or not. I'll probably talk to the previous owner, Keith, and see, but I think I can tell by looking at what bulbs are in it and what's going on with the dashboard, but I may need to convert some things to 12 volt. And then, yeah, I mean, could very well in 3 or 4 weeks be trying to start this thing, which I did not think was going to happen. So thanks for watching. See you next time. All right, everybody. Well, let's do that again.
You don't go out looking for a job dressed like that, do you? On a weekday?
Is this what day is this?